The flight attendant leaned in close as I boarded, her voice a terrified whisper. "Pretend you're sick and get off this plane." I thought she was crazy. I must have misheard her. But when she came back to my seat, her eyes wide with a fear I couldn't understand, she mouthed the words, "I'm begging you." 25 minutes later, I was fighting for my life in the airport terminal, finally understanding why. "Careful, Dad," Melissa whispered. Her voice was like syrup, but her fingernails were digging into my bicep. It wasn't a grip of support. It was a vice. It was control. I'm Edward, 71 years old, and for the last 6 months, ever since my wife Alice passed, I've been living in a fog. My son Gregory and his wife Melissa had insisted on this trip. "You need a break, Dad," Greg had said, his smile wide and reassuring. "We found a paradise in Panama. All-inclusive doctors on site, just pure relaxation." I didn't want to go. I just wanted to be in my home surrounded by Alice's things, but they were insistent. They packed my bags. They drove me to JFK. They walked me through security like a prized possession, or perhaps a prisoner. Gregory was ahead of me, showing our passports to the gate agent. "3 for Panama," he announced cheerfully. "Business class. My dad needs the legroom." I shuffled forward, and Melissa's grip tightened. "Just a few more steps, Edward," she cooed, calling me by my first name, a habit I always hated. I handed my boarding pass to the flight attendant. She was a young woman, maybe 30, with intelligent, serious eyes. Her name tag read, Jenna. She took my pass, glanced at it, and then her eyes snapped up to my face. She stared at me. She glanced quickly at Greg and Melissa, who were fussing with their carry-on bags, then back at me. There was something in her gaze. It wasn't a welcome. It was an appraisal. When she handed the pass back, her fingers brushed my palm. "Pretend you're sick," she whispered. Her voice was so low it was almost just air. "And run." I froze. "What?" Melissa was already pushing me from behind. "Go on, Dad, don't block the way." I stumbled into the plane, my mind reeling. A joke, had I heard that right? Was she confusing me with someone else? They led me to my seat, 1B, a spacious, comfortable pod. Greg sat across the aisle. Melissa took the seat next to me, effectively boxing me in. She immediately pulled out a magazine, but she wasn't reading it. Her knuckles were white as she gripped the cover. The plane finished boarding. The doors closed. The captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming us aboard. I tried to shake off the attendant's words. It was absurd. My son loved me. He was worried about me. This was a kind gesture. Then Jenna appeared again. She was holding a single plastic cup of water. "Sir," she said, leaning over Melissa to get to me, "I thought you might like some water before takeoff." Melissa looked up, annoyed. "He's fine. He doesn't need anything. It's no trouble," Jenna said, her professional smile locked in place. As she passed the cup to me, she leaned in her mouth close to my ear, her voice a desperate, urgent hiss. "Please, I am begging you. Say you have chest pains. Say you can't breathe. Get off this plane. Now." This time, there was no mistaking it. The terror in her voice was real. It shot through my confusion like a bolt of lightning. I looked at Melissa. Her face was a mask of cold impatience. I looked at Greg. He was watching the interaction, his eyes narrow. I knew in that instant that I was not on vacation. I was being transported. My hand of its own accord flew to my chest. I let the plastic cup drop water splashing onto the floor. I can't breathe," I gasped. Melissa's head snapped toward me. Her first reaction was not concern. It was pure, unfiltered anger. "Dad, stop it. You're just nervous about flying." "No," I moaned, letting my head fall back against the seat. I made a sound, a low groan of pain. "My chest. It's crushing me." Greg jumped up from his seat. Dad, what are you doing? Stop making a scene. The plane is about to take off. You are fine. He tried to push me back down into my seat, his son pushing him down. That single brutal action confirmed everything. I slapped his hand away with a strength I didn't know I had. Get a doctor! I yelled. My voice was louder now. Passengers in the rows behind us turned their heads. Help me, I think. A heart attack. People started to stand up. A different flight attendant ran over. Sir, what's wrong? He's fine, Melissa shouted, her voice high and shrill. He just gets panic attacks. Sit down, Edward. But I kept clutching my chest. Jenna, my savior, ran to the front of the cabin. We have a medical emergency. Passenger in 1B is reporting chest pains. The cabin descended into chaos. The lead attendant was on the phone with the captain. Passengers were whispering, alarmed. We have to deplane him, the lead attendant said firmly. We cannot take off with a passenger in this condition. Greg's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen. This is ridiculous. He's just faking it. He does this for attention. But it was too late. The seatbelt sign pinged off. The captain's voice came on announcing a medical delay. They were bringing a wheelchair. As the crew opened the cabin door and brought the narrow aisle chair toward me, I looked at my son and daughter-in-law. Their faces were not masks of worry for my health. They were masks of pure, unadulterated fury. They looked like two people whose meticulous, perfect plan had just been blown to pieces. They wheeled me off the plane. Greg and Melissa followed right behind, grabbing our carry-on bags. We are his family. We're coming with him, Greg said through gritted teeth. The moment the three of us were in the jet bridge alone and out of sight of the other passengers, Greg's hand shot out and grabbed the wheelchair, slamming it to a halt. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. The mask was gone. What the hell? He hissed, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Do you think you are doing? Melissa was shaking, but not from fear. From rage. We have to be on this flight, Edward. You can't do this. Do you have any idea how much work we put into this? I'm sick, I stammered, my heart genuinely pounding now. My chest. You are not sick. Greg grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my thin skin, trying to haul me out of the chair. You are going to get back on that plane. Help! I shouted, my voice echoing in the metal tube. Help me, they're trying to force me! Two TSA agents at the end of the jet bridge heard the commotion and started running toward us. Sir, ma'am, step away from him. What's going on? In the blink of an eye, Melissa burst into tears. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Her entire body shook with manufactured sobs. Oh, thank God you're here, she cried, rushing toward the agents. It's my father-in-law. He has dementia. He doesn't know where he is. He gets these terrible paranoid episodes. She fumbled in her oversized designer handbag and pulled out a thick folded stack of papers. Here are the papers. We're his legal medical guardians. We're taking him to a special facility in Panama, a wonderful place for his memory. The doctor said this might happen. He gets combative. Guardianship, facility, Panama. The words hit me one by one. This wasn't a trip. It was an expulsion. They're lying, I yelled, struggling against the wheelchair straps. I am not confused. I don't know them. Please call my lawyer, Mr. Sullivan and Associates. The agents were trapped. They looked at me, a wild-eyed 71-year-old man in a wheelchair, and then at Greg and Melissa, a well-dressed, respectable-looking couple, who were weeping and holding what looked like official legal documents. I could see the doubt in their eyes. Sir, we can't let him fly in this condition, one agent said firmly to Greg. But ma'am, he said to Melissa, we also can't force him to go with you if he's refusing and asking for a lawyer. The standoff was broken by the sound of the plane's door preparing to close. I saw Jenna, the flight attendant, step out one last time. She walked briskly toward the gate agent, ignoring us. We have to depart. "We are closing the door," she said loudly. She walked past my wheelchair, and as she did, she tripped, stumbling against me. In that split second of chaos, her hand darted into my coat pocket. "Don't trust them," she whispered, her voice gone in an instant. "Read the note." She straightened up, apologized to no one in particular, and hurried back onto the plane. The door hissed shut behind her. Greg and Melissa were stranded. Their expressions were murderous. "Sir," the agent said to me, "we're going to take you to the airport medical office to get you checked out. You two," he pointed to Greg and Melissa, "can wait for him in the main terminal." As they wheeled me away, I put my trembling hand in my pocket. I felt the crinkle of a small, wadded-up napkin. The airport medical office was a small, sterile white room. A nurse took my blood pressure and listened to my heart. "Your heart rate is high, sir, but your rhythm is strong. Are you feeling better?" I think so." I lied. "I think it was just a panic attack. I get them sometimes." My mind was racing. El Paraíso, guardianship, Panama. "May I please use the restroom?" The nurse pointed to a small door. "Of course, take your time." I went in and locked the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unfold the napkin. It was a cheap airport napkin, and Jenna's handwriting was frantic, scribbled in blue pen. "They are taking you to El Paraíso in Panama. I checked your reservation. It is a one-way ticket. It is not a resort. It is a long-term care facility, a dumping ground for wealthy families to get rid of relatives. They take your passport and your phone. They declare you medically incompetent. You will never leave." I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. My breath caught in my throat. This was real. I read the last part of the note scrawled at the bottom. "P.S. They did this to my grandfather 5 years ago, in Mexico. I recognized the facility's parent company name on your ticket. I couldn't stop them then, but I can warn you. Do not go home with them. They will find another way. Run. Run. My son. My only son, Gregory. And Melissa. They were trying to bury me alive." I fumbled for my phone. My hands were slick with cold sweat. I dialed the number I knew by heart. My lawyer. "Sullivan," I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's Edward. I'm at JFK, Terminal 4. Greg and Melissa. They're trying to send me to Panama. You have to listen to me." I poured out the story, the flight attendant, the fake guardianship papers, the name El Paraíso. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Sullivan's voice, usually so calm and measured, was suddenly sharp with panic. "Edward, listen to me. Do not go anywhere with them. You signed a power of attorney for Greg right after Alice died, didn't you? When you were grieving." My blood ran cold. My wife, Alice. The grief had been a tidal wave. 6 months ago, Greg had put a stack of papers in front of me. "Just to handle the bills, Dad. Don't you worry about a thing." I had signed them without reading. I had trusted my son. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I did." "God help us," Sullivan said. "Edward, that document gives him medical and financial control if you are declared incompetent. If they get you out of the country. If they get one doctor in Panama, a doctor they pay to sign a piece of paper, it's over. They will have full legal control of everything. Your house, your assets, everything." He paused, and his next words chilled me to the bone. "They can liquidate the Alice Trust. Edward, they can legally bury you alive, and there won't be a damn thing I can do about it." Just then, a heavy knock rattled the bathroom door. "Sir." It was the TSA agent. "Are you all right in there? Your son and his wife are very concerned. They said you've calmed down and they're ready to take you home." They were right outside the door. "Sullivan," I hissed into the phone. "They're here. They're trying to take me home. You have to get me out of here now. Don't let them take me." "I'm sending someone," Sullivan said, his voice grim. "A junior associate from our Midtown office. He'll be there in 20 minutes. Do whatever you have to do, Edward. Do not, under any circumstances, leave with them. I took a deep breath. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at the 71-year-old man in the mirror. The man who had just been betrayed by his own child. The man who was now fighting for his life. I unlocked the door. I walked out, attempting to look frail and confused, but calm. I apologize for all the trouble, I said to the nurse and the agent. It was a panic attack. I'm so sorry. Greg and Melissa rushed forward, their faces masks of loving concern. Oh, Dad, Melissa said, trying to hug me. I flinched away. We were so worried. Let's just get you home, Greg said, trying to grab my arm again. I pulled it back. No, I said, my voice shaking but firm. Greg's smile faltered. What? I want to go home, I said, looking the TSA agent in the eye. But I will not go with them. Greg's face, that mask of false concern, twisted into something I had never seen before. Pure, cold stone. Dad, don't be ridiculous. You're confused. You had a panic attack. We are taking you home. Melissa stepped forward, turning her performance toward the TSA agent. Her voice was syrupy with fake sympathy. Officer, you see, he's paranoid. This is exactly what his doctor warned us about. He gets agitated. He needs to be in a calm environment. He needs to be with us. The agent looked torn. He looked at me, a trembling old man, and then at them, the picture of a worried, competent couple. Sir, he said to me, his voice hesitant, they do have a medical power of attorney. Legally, they are responsible for your care. And they are abusing it, I shouted, my voice cracking. I told you I want my lawyer, Mr. Sullivan. He's stalling, Greg said, stepping toward my wheelchair. He does this. He's just trying to create a scene. We know how to handle him. Just as Greg's hand reached for the handle of my chair, a new voice cut through the tension. It was sharp and clear. I would advise you not to touch my client, Mr. Gregory. We all turned. A young man in a perfectly tailored blue suit was walking into the medical office. He held a slim briefcase. He looked too young to be a lawyer, but he moved with an authority that stopped everyone cold. Who the hell are you? Greg snapped. I'm Mr. Hayes, the young man said, handing a business card to the TSA agent. I'm an associate with Sullivan and Associates. I represent Mr. Edward. Melissa's face went pale. I could see her mind racing. This was not part of their plan. Thank God, I breathed, slumping back into the chair. This is absurd, Melissa stammered, recovering quickly. We are his family. We have the POA right here. He signed it. She thrust the papers at the young lawyer. Mr. Hayes didn't even look at them. He looked directly at the TSA agent. Officer, my client has just been subjected to an attempted kidnapping under the guise of medical care. Kidnapping? Greg exploded. That's slander. We are his guardians. Are you? Mr. Hayes asked calmly. Because this power of attorney only grants you authority, if Mr. Edward is declared incompetent. And as he is clearly sitting here articulating his wishes, and has already contacted his legal counsel, he is by definition perfectly competent. He then turned to me. Edward, did you agree to this trip to Panama? No, I said, my voice finding its strength. They told me it was a vacation. I just found out it was a one-way ticket. Mr. Hayes turned back to the agent. A one-way ticket to a facility called El Paraíso. We have reason to believe this facility is an unlicensed offshore holding center. My client was warned by a flight attendant that his life was in danger. This is insane, Melissa shrieked. He's making this up. He's delusional. He's paying this boy to say these things. Then you won't mind, Mr. Hayes said, his voice dropping. If we have the airline verify the one-way ticket status. And you certainly won't mind that we are filing an emergency petition with the court right now to have this power of attorney suspended based on suspected coercion and fraud. The word fraud echoed in the small, sterile room. The TSA agent instinctively took a step back from Greg and Melissa. "Sir," the agent said to Greg, his voice now firm and official, "I cannot in good conscience release Mr. Edward into your custody. He is free to leave with his legal representative." The color drained from Melissa's face. Greg looked like he was going to hit someone. "Bo!" he roared, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You are making a terrible mistake. You are destroying this family. You already did that," I said quietly. Mr. Hayes placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We're leaving Edward." As the young lawyer began to wheel me out of the office, Melissa lunged forward and grabbed my arm. Her grip was like iron. Her voice was no longer a whisper. It was a desperate, venomous hiss. "You'll regret this, you old fool. You have no idea what you've just done." "Oh, I think I do," I said, pulling my arm free. We left them standing there, stranded in the terminal, their perfect plan in absolute ruins. As the elevator doors closed, I finally felt like I could breathe. "This is absurd," Melissa stammered, recovering quickly. She thrust the stack of papers toward the young lawyer. "We are his family. We have his medical power of attorney. It's all legal. He signed it." Greg crossed his arms, trying to look imposing. "He's having an episode. He needs his medication, which is at home. We are taking him home. This associate has no authority here." Mr. Hayes didn't even glance at the papers Melissa was waving. He kept his focus entirely on the TSA agent, speaking with a calm, precise, and cutting authority. "Officer," he said, "let's be very clear about what a power of attorney is. This document, which I'm sure is legally signed, grants Mr. Gregory authority only if my client, Mr. Edward, is declared medically incompetent." He gestured toward me. "My client is sitting here. He is articulate. He has expressed his wishes clearly. He has recognized a threat. And he has successfully contacted his legal counsel. By any legal definition, he is perfectly competent." "He's not competent," Melissa shrieked. "He's paranoid. He thinks we're trying to kidnap him." "And perhaps he's right," Mr. Hayes said, his voice dropping. "Officer, my client's son and daughter-in-law did not book him a vacation. They booked him a one-way ticket to Panama." The TSA agent's eyes widened slightly. "Is that true?" he asked Greg. Greg faltered. It's an open-ended ticket. For his treatment. The facility recommended—" "The facility," Mr. Hayes interrupted, "is called El Paraíso. We already have a preliminary file on it. It is an unlicensed, unregulated offshore holding center. It is a place where families pay to make elderly relatives disappear." He turned his gaze on Greg and Melissa. It was like watching a predator corner its prey. "Attempting to transport a United States citizen out of the country against his will using a conditional POA under false pretenses to an unlicensed facility is not care. It is an act of profound bad faith and constitutes grounds for immediate suspension of all authority." He looked back at the agent. "My client is in danger. These two individuals have demonstrated that they are not acting in his best interest. They are acting in theirs. We are, as we speak, filing an emergency petition with the New York Superior Court to have this power of attorney immediately and permanently revoked, citing attempted abduction and financial malfeasance." The agent had heard enough. He put his hand up, stopping Greg from speaking again. "Sir, ma'am," he said to Greg and Melissa, "I cannot in good conscience release Mr. Edward into your custody. He is clearly stating his wishes and is represented by counsel. He is free to leave with his legal representative." "You can't do this," Greg roared. "Yes, I can," the agent said, his voice now like steel. "This is no longer a medical issue, it's a legal one, and frankly, it's starting to smell like a criminal one. Step back." The TSA agent, a man who had seen everything, finally made his decision. He looked at Mr. Hayes, then at me, and then pointed a firm finger at my son. "Sir, your authority under this POA is clearly in dispute. My responsibility is to the passenger, Mr. Edward has legal counsel present and has clearly stated his wish to leave with his lawyer. I cannot hold him, and I will not release him to you." It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Melissa let out a sound, a short, strangled gasp. Greg's face, which had been purple with rage, turned a waxy, sickly white. "You can't be serious," Greg whispered. "He is my father." "And I am his lawyer," Mr. Hayes countered. He stepped behind my wheelchair. "We will be leaving now. Officer, thank you for your professionalism." The agent nodded. "I'll have an escort walk you to the curb." Mr. Hayes began to push my chair. As we passed Greg and Melissa, they were frozen, paralyzed by the sudden and total loss of control. We rolled out of the medical office into the sterile brightness of the terminal. The 2 TSA agents walked with us, one in front, one behind, creating a small, protective bubble. The sounds of the airport returned, the distant announcements, the rolling of suitcases, the murmur of travelers. It felt surreal, like emerging from a soundproof room. "You can't just take him!" Melissa suddenly shrieked, her voice echoing in the terminal. She and Greg were running after us. "We have the papers. He's not well. He'll hurt himself." People were stopping to stare. A mother pulled her child closer. Mr. Hayes didn't slow down. "Keep walking, Edward," he said to me quietly. "Bo!" Greg shouted, his voice breaking with a desperate, childish fury. "You are destroying this family. You're choosing this stranger over us." I kept my head down, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Destroying the family. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. We reached the exit doors. A black town car was waiting at the curb, just as Mr. Hayes had apparently arranged. The agent in front of us pushed the door open. The cold, damp New York air hit my face. It was the best breath I had ever taken. As Mr. Hayes helped me out of the wheelchair and into the car, Greg made one last desperate lunge. "You old fool!" he screamed, his face contorted. "You'll regret this! You have no idea what you've just done!" The TSA agent blocked his path. "That's enough, sir. Step back." The car door slammed shut, cutting off their voices. Mr. Hayes jumped into the driver's seat, and we pulled away from the curb, leaving my son and daughter-in-law standing helplessly on the sidewalk, their faces masks of ugly, impotent rage. I looked back through the rear window, until they were just 2 small, angry specks in the chaos of the airport. I was shaking so violently, my teeth were chattering. "It's okay, Edward," Mr. Hayes said gently. "You're safe." Where are we going?" I stammered. "They'll be waiting at my apartment." "We are not going to your apartment," he said. "We're going to a safe place. Mr. Sullivan is waiting for us." He drove not to my quiet neighborhood in Queens, but deep into the heart of Manhattan, to a discreet, expensive-looking hotel I didn't recognize. He led me through a private entrance, up a service elevator, and directly into a large suite. Mr. Sullivan, my lawyer for 30 years, was standing by the window, looking out over the city. He wasn't the warm, friendly man I'd shared brandy with after Alice's funeral. Today he looked like a general preparing for war. "Thank you, Hayes," Sullivan said to his young associate. "Good work. I'll take it from here." The young man nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. "Edward," Sullivan said, his voice grim. He motioned to a plush armchair. "Sit down. You need to listen to me very carefully." I sank into the chair, my legs feeling like water. They tried to make me disappear, Sullivan. A one-way ticket." "I know," he said. "I've already had the airline confirm it. And I've already confirmed the existence of El Paraíso. It's worse than you think." He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Edward, you're safe for tonight. But you must understand. This is not over. This is just the beginning." I looked at him confused. "What do you mean we stopped them? They lost." Sullivan shook his head slowly. "No. They failed. There's a difference. They failed to get you out of the country. They lost their easy option. Now they are backed into a corner. Think about it. They just revealed their entire plan. They've been exposed, and they are desperate. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. You have no idea what those two are truly capable of. They will not stop now. They will only get more desperate. And desperate people, Edward, desperate people are the most dangerous people in the world. Sullivan walked over to the minibar, opened a small bottle of water, and handed it to me. Drink this, Edward. You're still in shock. I took it, but my hand was shaking so badly that water sloshed onto my pants. Sullivan, what did you mean? What do you mean they'll be more desperate? We stopped them. They've been exposed. Sullivan sighed and sat in the chair opposite me. He leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. Edward, what did you know about Alice's finances, her personal finances from her family? I shrugged, confused by the question. I knew her family had money. She inherited some. We were comfortable. She set up some accounts for me after she was diagnosed, said it would make things easier, pay the bills. I never looked too closely. I trusted her. Why? Alice wasn't just comfortable, Edward, Sullivan said, his voice quiet. She was, to use the precise legal term, extraordinarily wealthy. Her family's money wasn't just some. It was a significant East Coast shipping fortune. I stared at him. What are you talking about? We lived in Queens. We drove a Buick. That was her choice, Sullivan said. She'd seen what money did to her own cousins. She despised it. She hid it. She lived simply. But she was a brilliant investor. And 5 years ago, knowing her health was uncertain, she set up an irrevocable trust. A trust, Edward, that she never discussed in detail with you or Gregory. A cold dread, heavier than the fear at the airport, was beginning to settle in my stomach. What? How much are we talking about, Sullivan? Sullivan didn't blink. As of this morning's market open, the Alice Parker Trust is valued at $52 million. I couldn't speak. The number was abstract. It didn't make sense. 50 million. And here is the part you must understand. Sullivan continued, his voice like a surgeon's. You, Edward, are the primary income beneficiary. You are paid a very, very generous monthly stipend from the interest, which is why your personal bank accounts always seemed perfectly healthy. It's why Greg and Melissa assumed you were just a retired man with a good pension. I was still reeling. But if it's a trust, if it's protected, what's the problem? What can they do? Sullivan's face darkened. That's the genius and the horror of Alice's plan. She was terrified of Gregory. She saw his greed, his recklessness long before you did. She knew he couldn't be trusted. So she protected the money from him, I asked. Yes, but she also created a ticking time bomb. The trust document, which I have right here, he tapped his briefcase, has a very specific stipulation, an incapacity clause. I just stared at him, not understanding. The clause states, Sullivan explained, that if you, Edward, are ever deemed legally incompetent to manage your own affairs, either by a U.S. court or by the signed notarized declaration of 2 board-certified physicians, your status as beneficiary is terminated. Terminated instantly, and the entire $52 million principal of the trust, Sullivan said, letting the words hang in the air, is to be paid out immediately to the secondary beneficiary. A terrible, sickening realization dawned on me. Oh my God! Who, I whispered, though I already knew the answer, is the secondary beneficiary? Your son, Gregory. I felt the air leave my lungs. It all became crystal clear. The vacation, the one-way ticket, the special facility, the guardianship papers. They weren't just trying to get control of my pension, were they? I said, my voice hollow. Or the house. The house is nothing, Sullivan said grimly. This was never about your modest savings, Edward. This was never about you being a burden. This was a $50 million heist, and they were this close to pulling it off. All they needed was one paid-off doctor in Panama to sign a paper, and they would have activated that clause before I even knew you were gone. I finally understood the terror in Jenna's eyes, the pure murderous rage in Greg's. So now, I said, the pieces clicking into place. Now that the Panama plan failed, now, Sullivan interrupted, they have to try Plan B. They have to get you declared incompetent here, in New York. They have no other choice. Their debts are due, they are cornered, and now they won't be subtle about it. They will be fast, and they will be brutal. Sullivan paced the hotel suite, his hands behind his back. Edward, you are the primary income beneficiary of the Alice Parker Trust. That's the legal term. What it means in simple terms is that for the last 6 months, a significant sum of money has been deposited into your checking account on the first of every month. Enough to cover the mortgage, the utilities, the car, the insurance, and leave a very comfortable cushion. I just stared at him. I thought that was my pension and Alice's. I just assumed the accounts were set up. And she wanted you to assume that, Sullivan said, stopping to look at me. She wanted your life to continue without a ripple. She didn't want you to have to worry about a single bill. That stipend was calculated to make you feel comfortable, but not so extravagant that you'd question its source. It was Alice's final gift to you, to let you grieve in peace. He paused and his expression hardened. But it wasn't her only motive. Alice was brilliant. She was a strategic thinker. And Edward, Alice was afraid. Afraid, I whispered. Afraid of what? Of Gregory, Sullivan said flatly. She loved him. But she was not blind. She saw things that you as his father perhaps couldn't. Or maybe you just didn't want to see. He began pacing again, ticking points off on his fingers. She saw the way he looked at her family's paintings when he visited. She knew about the money that went missing from her purse when he was home from college. She saw the string of failed business ideas, each one needing just a little more seed money. She saw his impatience. She saw his greed. She knew Edward. She knew he could not be trusted with her legacy. I wanted to defend my son. I wanted to say he was just ambitious, that he made mistakes. But the words died in my throat, because deep down I knew Sullivan was right. So, Sullivan continued, the trust wasn't just designed to provide for you. It was designed to protect the principal, the $52 million, from Gregory. He was never meant to touch it, not while you were alive and well. But then what was their plan? I asked. If the trust is locked, what good would taking me to Panama do? Sullivan stopped and faced me. His eyes were grave. Because Alice in her brilliance created a loophole, a contingency plan that Gregory and Melissa have twisted into a weapon. Buried deep in the trust document in dense legal language is Article 12A. I call it the incapacity clause. He let the words hang in the air. It was meant to protect you in case you truly became unwell, if you suffered a stroke or developed severe dementia and couldn't manage your own affairs. It was a failsafe. What does it do? I asked, dreading the answer. It states, Sullivan said, his voice slow and precise, that in the event that you, Edward, are deemed legally incompetent to manage your own person and finances, whether by a U.S. Superior Court or, he paused, letting the word hang in the air, or by the signed, notarized declaration of 2 board-certified physicians, your status as primary beneficiary is terminated. Terminated, instantly. And the entire $52 million principal of the trust, Sullivan said, letting the words hang in the air, is to be paid out immediately to the secondary beneficiary. The room was silent. I could hear the faint sound of traffic 20 floors below. I could feel my own heart hammering against my ribs, a slow, heavy drumbeat of dawning horror. "Who's Sullivan?" I asked, though I already knew. The answer was rising in my throat like bile. "Who is the secondary beneficiary?" "Your son," Sullivan said. "Gregory." I sank back into the hotel chair, the plush fabric suddenly feeling cold and hard. The air had been sucked from my lungs. It wasn't just about getting me out of the way. It wasn't about silencing me or getting control of my pension. The one-way ticket. The fake guardianship papers. The special facility. The doctor they were going to have waiting for me. "Oh my God," I whispered, the full, monstrous weight of it crushing me. They weren't just trying to control me. Sullivan closed the heavy document with a soft thud. "No, Edward," he said, his voice now cold as steel. "They were trying to activate the clause. This was never about your care. This was a $50 million heist." I stood up from the chair and walked to the window, staring down at the blur of yellow cabs on the street below. $52 million. The number was obscene. It was a motive for murder, and they had almost succeeded. "He'll try again," I said, my voice hollow. "Sullivan, he has to. He won't just give up." "No, he won't," Sullivan agreed. "And now that the Panama plan has failed, he'll move to Plan B. He will try to get you declared incompetent here in New York. He'll find another doctor. A Dr. Reed, perhaps. Someone he can pay. He'll start building a case." "Then we have to build one faster," I said, turning back to him. My fear was hardening into something else. A cold, sharp anger. "We need the flight attendant, Jenna." Sullivan nodded, already pulling out his phone. "Exactly. She's our only corroborating witness to the events at the airport. Without her, it's your word against theirs. It's the word of a confused old man against his loving family." "They'll go after her, Sullivan," I insisted. "When they find out she's the one who warned me, she could be in danger. Or they'll pay her off. We have to find her first." "I'm already on it," Sullivan said, dialing a number. "I have a man I use for situations like this. He's not cheap, but he's the best." He put the phone to his ear. "Mason, it's Sullivan. I have a situation, a sensitive one. I need two things. First, find a flight attendant named Jenna Jensen. She works for American Flight 801 to Panama City this morning. She was pulled from the flight. Find out her status. Find out where she is. I need to talk to her. Yes, it's urgent." He listened for a moment. "Second, I need a full-spectrum investigation on two individuals, Gregory and Melissa Parker." "Yes, that Gregory. I want everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, known associates, debts, especially debts. I want to know who they talk to, where they go. I want to know what they're planning before they do it. I don't care what it costs. I need it yesterday." He hung up. "Mason's on it. He's a private investigator. He'll find her, and he'll find out just how deep this rot goes with Gregory." "He was always impulsive," I murmured, thinking of my son. "Always had big ideas that never quite worked." "This wasn't an idea, Edward," Sullivan said grimly. "This was a conspiracy. And Melissa, don't underestimate her. My guess is she's the gas and Gregory is the fire. Now we wait for Mason to tell us what we're really up against. We need to know exactly how desperate they are. That will tell us what they're capable of doing next." The call came 2 days later. I was pacing the floor of the hotel suite, which had started to feel like a luxurious prison. I'd eaten room service I couldn't taste and stared at a television screen I wasn't watching. Sullivan was with me, working silently on his laptop. When his phone buzzed, he snatched it up. "Sullivan," and he listened for a long moment, his face impassive. "I see. And her status?" He listened again. "Understood. Put her in a secure location. I want to talk to her in person, but not until she's safe." He muted the call and looked at me. "That was Mason. He found Jenna. The airline suspended her indefinitely for causing a passenger disturbance and delaying a flight. She's terrified. She thinks they're watching her house. Mason is moving her to a corporate apartment as we speak. My heart sank. A young woman's career was in jeopardy all because she had tried to save me. Sullivan, we have to protect her. We have to pay. We will, he said, and unmuted the phone. All right, Mason. What about the financials? What are we really looking at? He pressed the speakerphone button. A new voice, rough and professional, filled the room. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Edward, it's not just bad. It's a catastrophe. Go on, Sullivan said. Gregory isn't just ambitious. Mason's voice crackled. He's broke. Utterly, completely bankrupt. His consulting firm is a shell company. It hasn't billed a single client in 9 months. He's been living on air. That's impossible, I said. His car, their apartment, all leased, and all of it is 3 months in arrears, Mason replied. He's been funding his life by shuffling credit card debt. He has 27 active cards all maxed out. That's just the surface. He was siphoning money from somewhere else to stay afloat. Sullivan and I looked at each other. The checking account, Sullivan murmured. Alice's stipend. I felt sick, I gave him a debit card after Alice passed. For house emergencies, I told him. In case I need you to pick something up for me. He's been picking things up all right, Mason said. Regular cash withdrawals. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Looks like about $60,000 in the last 4 months alone. But that's not the real problem. The credit cards are a mess, but they're manageable. What, Sullivan asked, is the real problem, Mason? The other loans, Mason said. Mr. Sullivan, your client's son has a sickness. He likes to gamble. High-stakes sports betting. Online poker rooms that aren't based in this country. How much? I whispered, my voice barely audible. He's in deep. I've tracked payments to 3 offshore accounts, and more worryingly to 2 private lenders operating out of Brooklyn. Unofficial. The kind that don't file paperwork or check your credit score. Mason, Sullivan said, his voice hard. Give us the number. There was a pause, the sound of a paper rustling. As near as I can figure in the last 48 hours, Gregory is in the hole for at least $2 million. $2 million. I collapsed into the chair. He couldn't be. That's insane. And his wife Melissa isn't helping. Mason continued, his voice devoid of emotion. She's not a gambler, she's just a black hole for cash. I've got receipts from Bergdorf's Chanel, a new Escalade lease she signed last week. She's been spending money like she's already a 50 millionaire. They're both living a fantasy. So they're desperate, Sullivan said. That's the final piece, Mason said, and I could almost hear him nodding. These private lenders in Brooklyn, they're not patient. They're not banks. I got some chatter from an informant. Gregory was given a deadline. He missed his last good faith payment 2 weeks ago. They gave him one last extension, a final one. What's the deadline? Sullivan asked. 30 days, Mason replied. That was 9 days ago. They want their $2 million in 21 days. Or to quote my source, Melissa is going to find out what Gregory's kneecaps look like from the inside out. The room was silent. I looked at Sullivan. The dates. The sudden trip. The one-way ticket. That's why Puffs. I said, the terrible realization dawning. That's why Panama. It wasn't just a plan. It was a deadline. They had to get me out of the country, get me declared incompetent, and get their hands on Alice's trust immediately. Yes, Sullivan said, his face grim. And now that you're here, their easy option is gone. They have 21 days left. My blood ran cold. What? What will they do now? Sullivan closed his eyes for a second. They can't wait for a long, drawn-out court battle, Edward. They don't have time. They'll have to act fast. And whatever they do next, it won't be subtle. It will be sloppy. And it will be extremely dangerous. The silence in the hotel suite was suffocating. 21 days. The number echoed in my head, a countdown to my son's ruin. Or mine. "They'll call," I said, my voice hoarse. "They'll try to reach me. They'll try to—" "What, apologize, beg?" Sullivan shook his head. "No, they won't beg you. They will try to discredit you. They will try to paint you as exactly what they told the TSA agent: you were a confused, paranoid old man. They have to. It's their only move left." He was right. The proof came less than an hour later. My personal cell phone, which I'd kept silent, lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Bill Harrison, my oldest friend. We'd served in the army together. I looked at Sullivan. He nodded. "Answer it. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what they're selling." I pressed the button. "Bill. Edward. Thank God, are you all right? Where are you?" Bill's voice was frantic with a manufactured worry. I'm fine, Bill. I'm with my lawyer. Why?" There was a pause. "Your lawyer, Edward. What's going on? Greg just called me. He sounded terrified. He said you had some kind of breakdown at the airport. He said you're not well." What else did he say, Bill?" "He said you've been confused ever since Alice passed, that you've become paranoid. He said you're accusing him and Melissa of terrible things, of trying to steal from you. He said a lawyer has gotten into your head, convinced you of these fantasies, and is manipulating you to get at Alice's money." I closed my eyes. It was exactly as Sullivan had predicted. The smear campaign had begun. "He said you're a danger to yourself, Edward." Bill continued, his voice heavy with concern. "He said you ran off and they're just trying to find you to get you the medical help you need." He was crying, Ed. Crying. "Bill, you need to listen to me." "No, you listen, Ed. Greg is your son. He loves you. Whatever this lawyer is telling you, it's not true. Go home. Talk to your family." "Bill, I have to go. Just get help, Edward, please, before it's too late." The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated. He had poisoned my oldest friend against me in a single phone call. "That's Plan B," Sullivan said quietly. "They're not just trying to build a case for a judge. They're isolating you. They're turning your entire support system against you one by one. By the time we get to court, they want you to have no one left in your corner. They want the world to believe you are exactly what they need you to be: dangerously unstable." And I knew he was right. Because they weren't just my son and daughter-in-law anymore. They were cornered animals chewing through anything and anyone to get to their $50 million prize. It took another 24 hours. 24 hours of me pacing the suite, staring at my phone, imagining every terrible scenario. I was a 71-year-old man who had built a successful, quiet life, and now I felt like a fugitive. Sullivan was my only anchor. When his phone finally buzzed with Mason's name, I stopped breathing. "Talk to me," Sullivan said, putting the call on speaker. "I've got her." Mason's voice crackled. "Jenna Jensen. It wasn't easy. She wasn't at her apartment." "Is she safe?" I blurted out. "She is now," Mason said. "But she's not okay. I found her at her sister's place in Hoboken. The airline suspended her. Indefinitely, pending an investigation. The charge," Mason's voice was dry, "causing a passenger disturbance and delaying a flight." My heart sank. This brave young woman had risked her entire livelihood for me, a complete stranger. "She's spooked, Mr. Sullivan," Mason continued. "And I don't blame her. She thinks she's being watched. She says a black sedan has been parked across from her apartment building for 2 days ever since the incident. She was afraid to go home." "Are they watching her?" Sullivan asked, his voice sharp. Hard to say, Mason replied. Could be Gregory's lenders. Could be paranoia. Doesn't matter. The threat feels real to her. I'm moving her to a corporate apartment in the village right now. We're clean. No one followed us. She's safe. Good work, Mason. I need to speak with her now. There was a muffled sound, and then a new voice, small and trembling. Hello, Ms. Jensen. My name is Sullivan. I'm the attorney for Mr. Edward, the man you warned at the airport. I shouldn't be talking to you, she whispered. The airline said not to talk to anyone. Ms. Jensen, Sullivan said, his voice softening, becoming kind. You did an incredibly brave thing. What you did was not a disturbance. It was a rescue. We are going to make this right. First, as of this moment, you are on my firm's payroll. We will cover every cent of your lost wages, and we will handle the airline. Your job is secure. Second, you are under our protection. Mason will not leave you. No one can touch you. There was a long pause, then the sound of a choked sob. I don't care about the job, she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. They did that to my grandfather, my mom's dad. They put him in a home in Mexico. They said he was confused. He never came back. When I saw that one-way ticket and the name El Paraíso, it was just like, I couldn't let it happen again. You are a good person, Ms. Jensen, I said, my own voice hoarse. I'm scared, Mr. Sullivan, she whispered. Those people, the way they looked. I know, Sullivan said. But we need you. You are the only person who witnessed their attempt. Your testimony can stop them for good. Can we count on you? Another pause. I could hear her take a deep, shaky breath. Yes, she said, her voice suddenly firm. I'm scared, but I'm not a coward. I'll talk. I will tell the court exactly what I saw and exactly what I know. Sullivan and I were reviewing Mason's preliminary report. The air in the hotel suite was thick, heavy with the stench of Gregory's desperation. $2 million. I kept saying the words, feeling foreign in my mouth. In 21 days. He can't possibly think. He's not thinking, Edward, Sullivan said, his voice grim. He's reacting. He's a cornered animal, and he is about to do something rash. As if summoned by the words, a loud, sharp knock echoed through the suite. It wasn't the polite tap of room service. It was an impatient, authoritative banging. Sullivan and I froze. We looked at each other across the coffee table. No one, absolutely no one, was supposed to know we were here. Sullivan put a single finger to his lips. He crept silently over the thick carpet to the door and looked through the peephole. He was still for a long, silent moment. He stepped back, his face pale, his eyes wide. It's them, he whispered. Greg and Melissa. Yes, and they are not alone. There are 2 other men with them, large men, in suits. The knocking came again, louder this time, rattling the door in its frame. Dad, I know you're in there. It was Gregory's voice, muffled but vibrating with a rage he wasn't even trying to hide. Open this door. We know you're with that lawyer. Don't move. Sullivan whispered, his hand already on his phone dialing. Don't say a single word. Dad, please. Now it was Melissa's voice, a high-pitched, sickly sweet sound that was somehow more terrifying than Gregory's anger. We're so worried about you. We just want to talk. We brought someone who can help you. Who? I mouthed to Sullivan. Sullivan held up his hand, listening to his call. Mason, I have a code red. My location, Suite 10B, now. They're here. They're trying to force entry. Bring your team. The banging on the door became a rhythmic, violent pounding. Edward! Melissa shrieked, her voice now pitched for the entire hallway to hear. Please, Dr. Reed is here. He just wants to ask you a few questions. He's a specialist. He's here to help. Dr. Reed, the paid-off doctor. My God. They hadn't just found another doctor. They had brought him. This was it. This was Plan B. They're going to try to get him to sign a competency evaluation right here, Sullivan whispered, his eyes darting around the room assessing. They're trying to manufacture the two physicians' signature right now. The other man must be the second doctor. Open this door, Dad, Gregory roared. You are not well. If you don't open this door, we will have hotel security do it. We have your medical power of attorney. We have the right to see you. This was their move. It was brilliant and horrifying. They were creating a public hysterical scene. They were painting me as the uncooperative, barricaded mental patient. They were trying to get hotel security, or even the police, to be their muscle to drag me out of my room and into the care of their paid doctor. The phone by the hotel bed rang shrill and demanding. It was the front desk. Sullivan snatched it up. This is Mr. Sullivan. I am legal counsel for the guest in this room. Yes, I am aware of the disturbance. The people in the hallway are violating a pending restraining order. They are attempting to abduct my client. No, he is not in medical distress. He is under my legal protection. Send your head of security up here immediately, and I advise you to call the NYPD. He slammed the phone down. Instantly, the pounding on the door stopped. Dead silence. I could hear frantic, muffled whispering from the other side. They were arguing. They hadn't expected me to have a lawyer in the room with me. They had expected to find a scared, confused, isolated old man they could easily overpower. They're not leaving, I whispered. No, Sullivan said calmly, straightening his tie. They're just deciding what to do next. The heavy, solid thud of a fist on the hotel suite door echoed through the room. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a demand. Dad, I know you're in there. Open this door. We know you're with that lawyer. Gregory's voice was muffled by the thick wood, but the rage came through, raw and vibrating. I was frozen in the armchair, my heart a trapped bird against my ribs. Sullivan. My lawyer was standing near the door, listening. He held up a single, calming hand. Then came Melissa's voice, a high-pitched, syrupy, sweet sound that was somehow more terrifying than Gregory's anger. Dad. Edward, please. We're so worried about you. We just want to talk. We brought someone who can help you. Dr. Reed is here. He's a specialist, honey. He just wants to ask you a few questions. Dr. Reed. The name hung in the air. The paid-off doctor. This was it. This was Plan B. They were trying to get their second physician's signature right here, right now, to declare me incompetent. Sullivan shook his head slowly. We remained perfectly silent. The silence from the hallway stretched for a long, tense 10 seconds. They had expected me to answer, to be alone and scared. They hadn't expected me to be silent. Then the performance began. Oh my God! Melissa shrieked, her voice suddenly climbing into a hysterical register, a sound designed to echo down the entire hotel corridor. He's not answering, Gregory. He's not answering. What if something's happened? What if he's hurt? The pounding on the door began again, this time frantic, violent. Bang, bang, bang. Dad, open the door, Gregory roared. Help! Melissa screamed, no longer at the door but to the hallway at large. Somebody help us! My father-in-law is in there! He's mentally unstable, he's not well, he ran away from us and he's a danger to himself. He was talking about ending things. My blood ran cold. She was lying. She was telling the entire hotel I was suicidal. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. Brilliant, he muttered under his breath. She's manufacturing a wellness check. She's trying to get hotel security or even the NYPD to be her muscle to break down this door for them. I could hear other doors opening in the hallway, muffled voices. What's going on out there? Please! Melissa sobbed, a full-blown performance now. He's 71. He has dementia. His horrible lawyer is in there with him trying to take his money. He's convinced him we're the enemy. Security, we need security. He has to be taken to a hospital. This was their plan. To create a public scene so frantic, so believable, that hotel security would have no choice but to force the door open. The moment I was dragged out into the hallway, confused and protesting, their two doctors, Reed and the other man in the suit, would swarm me. They would declare me agitated and incompetent on the spot. They would have me committed before Sullivan could even file a motion. They were fast-tracking the incapacity clause. Just then, the hotel phone on the desk rang, a shrill, piercing sound that cut through the noise from the hall. Sullivan walked over calmly and picked it up. "This is Mr. Sullivan." He listened for a second. "Yes, I'm fully aware of the disturbance. I am legal counsel for the guest in this room, Mr. Edward. My client is not in medical distress. He is, however, being harassed and slandered by the two individuals in your hallway." "We have a power of attorney," Gregory yelled from outside, his voice tight with frustration. "We have the legal right to see him open this door, or we'll have you charged with kidnapping an elderly person." Sullivan ignored him, his voice to the phone calm and authoritative. "The two individuals in the hallway, Mr. Gregory and Mrs. Melissa Parker, are the subject of an emergency restraining order petition we are filing as we speak for their actions at JFK Airport, which included attempted abduction. They are here with two unidentified men who just identified themselves as medical professionals in an attempt to have my client committed against his will for financial gain." He paused, letting that sink in. "Yes, I'm talking about the $52 million Alice Parker Trust. I'm sure your hotel's legal department will understand the catastrophic liability if you assist them in this illegal act. No, we do not require assistance. We require you to remove them from this floor. If you fail to do so, we will hold the hotel liable for aiding and abetting. Thank you." He hung up the phone. Absolute dead silence from the hallway. The screaming had stopped. The pounding had stopped. Then I heard frantic, furious whispering. I could hear Melissa's voice, high and panicked. How did he know? How did he... That... And Gregory's, "Shut up, just shut up, we need to go, now." I heard heavy, fast footsteps retreating down the hall. A moment later, the distant ding of the elevator. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. My entire body was shaking. "That," Sullivan said calmly, straightening his tie, "was their desperate, sloppy move. They failed." He looked at me, his face grim. "Now they will move on to the final and only option they have left." "What's the final option?" I whispered. "The courts," Sullivan said. "They can't ambush you now, so they'll try to legally, publicly, and permanently destroy you." The pounding on the door became frantic, violent. Gregory was shouting my name over and over, his voice hoarse with rage. But it was Melissa who escalated it. It was Melissa who turned their failed ambush into a public spectacle. She ran down the hallway away from our door, screaming, "Help somebody, help us, security!" I heard her voice, high and piercing, echoing from the elevator bank. "My father-in-law is in Suite 10B. He's mentally unstable. He's not well. He's a danger to himself." He was talking about ending things. My blood ran cold. She was lying. She was telling the entire hotel I was suicidal. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. "Brilliant," he muttered under his breath. "She's manufacturing a wellness check. She's trying to get hotel security or even the NYPD to be her muscle to break down this door for them." Sure enough, a moment later I heard new voices. A firm knock, different from Gregory's rage. "Sir, this is hotel security. We've had a report of a medical emergency. Please open the door." "He can't," Melissa shrieked, now back at the door. "He's barricaded himself in. His lawyer is in there with him, enabling him. He's convinced him we're the enemy." Gregory picked up the cue. "We have his medical power of attorney," he yelled, his voice tight with frustration. "We have the legal right to see him open this door, or we'll have you charged with kidnapping an elderly person." This was their move. It was horrifyingly smart. They were creating a public, frantic scene. They were painting me as the uncooperative, barricaded mental patient. They were trying to get hotel security to be their muscle, to force the door open and drag me out into the hallway. The moment I was dragged out, confused and protesting, their two doctors, Reed and the other man in the suit, would swarm me. They would declare me agitated and incompetent on the spot. They would have me committed before Sullivan could even file a motion. They were fast-tracking the incapacity clause. The phone by the hotel bed rang, shrill and demanding. It was the front desk. Sullivan snatched it up. "This is Mr. Sullivan." He listened for a second. "Yes, I am fully aware of the disturbance. I am legal counsel for the guest in this room, Mr. Edward. My client is not in medical distress. He is, however, being harassed and slandered by the two individuals in your hallway. Yes, they are his family. They are also attempting to abduct him for financial gain." He listened again, his face like stone. "No, you will not be forcing entry. You will not be sending your officers up. The people in the hallway are violating a pending restraining order. If you assist them in this illegal act, we will hold the hotel and its parent corporation liable for aiding and abetting. Do you understand me good? Send your head of security. Now!" The pounding stopped. The screaming cut off. The silence that filled the hallway was somehow worse. It was the sound of my son and daughter-in-law realizing they had miscalculated, that their prey was not in fact alone. I could hear their frantic, muffled whispering, the sound of panic. Then a new knock. Firm, professional. "Sir, this is hotel security. Please open the door. We need to verify your well-being." Sullivan smoothed his jacket. He looked at me and nodded once. He walked to the door and opened it wide. The scene in the hallway was a pathetic mess. Two hotel security officers stood in front, at their faces stern and confused. Behind them, Melissa was hiding her face, blotchy and streaked with fake tears. Gregory was pale, his fists clenched, looking cornered. And beside them, the two men in suits, Dr. Reed and his associate, looked deeply uncomfortable, like actors who had forgotten their lines. Sullivan didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His presence filled the doorway. "Good evening, Gregory. Melissa." They both flinched. "I am Mr. Sullivan, counsel for Mr. Edward, and this," he gestured to Mason, the PI who was standing silently by the window inside the room, "is my investigator. We have been documenting this entire performance." The security officers looked confused. "Sir, we had a report of a medical emergency and a possible kidnapping." "You had a report of a lie." Sullivan cut him off, his voice like ice. "What you have witnessed is an illegal detainment attempt orchestrated by these two individuals to gain unlawful access to my client." "That's not true," Melissa shrieked. "We have a power of attorney. He's our responsibility. He's sick." "Officers," Sullivan said, ignoring her completely. He held up his phone, showing an email with a court seal and a timestamp. "This is a temporary restraining order filed with the New York Superior Court and granted by an emergency judge 1 hour ago. It legally bars Mr. Gregory and Mrs. Melissa Parker from coming within 100 yards of my client." He then held up a second document, a printed email. "This is a copy of the formal complaint we are filing against Dr. Reed for medical malpractice and conspiracy to commit fraud." Dr. Reed's face went ashen. He took an involuntary step back. "This is an outrage!" Gregory yelled, but his voice was trembling. "No," Sullivan said. "This is the law." He looked back at the security team, who now understood exactly what was happening. "My client, Mr. Edward, is leaving. My investigator and I will be escorting him. If Mr. and Mrs. Parker attempt to follow us, if they attempt to speak to him, if they so much as look at him in the elevator, you will be witnessing the violation of a direct court order, and I will expect you to detain them for the NYPD." He turned to me. "Edward, it's time to go." Mason picked up my small, pre-packed bag. Sullivan stepped aside. I stood up, and for the first time I walked out of that room. I walked past Dr. Reed, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked past Melissa, who was covering her mouth, her scheme collapsing around her. And I walked past my son. He just stared at me, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it barely looked human. We walked to the elevator, a silent procession. As the doors started to slide shut, Gregory lunged forward, his face a mask of desperation. "We'll see you in court, old man," he screamed, his voice cracking. "We'll see you at the competency hearing, and you will lose." The doors closed, sealing him off. The courtroom was cold, not the temperature, but the feeling. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by a dry cough from the back row. The wooden benches were hard, unforgiving, designed for judgment, not comfort. I sat beside Sullivan, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. Across the room I saw them, Gregory and Melissa. They were not dressed in the frantic, desperate rage I had last seen at the hotel. They were transformed. Melissa wore a modest, high-collared navy blue dress, her hair pulled back. She looked like a grieving daughter, respectable and heartbroken. Gregory wore a simple dark suit, his face a mask of solemn concern. They looked innocent. They looked credible. They weren't looking at me. They were whispering to their lawyer, a man whose suit probably cost more than my car. He was slick with silver hair and a smile that seemed permanently attached to his face. And the worst part, they looked confident, smug. They truly believed they had this won. They had their story, they had their forged documents, and they had their paid-off doctor. This was just the final formality before they collected their $52 million prize. "All rise," the bailiff said. The judge entered. The room settled. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. "Mr. Peterson," the judge said, nodding to their lawyer, "you may begin." Their lawyer stood up, buttoning his jacket. He walked toward the jury, his movements slow and theatrical. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice dripping with false empathy, "what you are about to hear is not a story of greed. It is a story of tragedy." He pointed a sympathetic finger at Gregory and Melissa. "It is the tragedy of two devoted children, Gregory and Melissa Parker, who are watching the father they love, the brilliant man who raised them, disappear before their very eyes." He paused, letting the words sink in. I could see the jury members leaning forward, their faces full of compassion. "You will hear," he continued, "how Mr. Edward, my client's father, has suffered a severe and rapid cognitive decline since the tragic passing of his beloved wife, Alice. You will hear how he has become paranoid, delusional, a danger to himself. And you will hear how his son and daughter-in-law have done everything in their power to get him the help he so desperately needs, only to be blocked at every turn by opportunists seeking to control his vast estate." He gestured vaguely toward Sullivan, who sat as still as a statue. "This is not a trial. This is an intervention. And today we are asking the court to do what is right, to protect Edward from himself, to place him in the care of the only people in the world who truly love him." It was a masterful performance. I was already the villain. "So, the petitioners call their first witness," he said, turning. "Dr. Marcus Reed." Dr. Reed, the man from the hotel hallway. He walked to the stand. He looked exactly as they had chosen him to look, credible, distinguished, with graying temples and a kind, paternal expression. He was the perfect image of a trustworthy physician. He swore his oath, his voice calm and steady. "Dr. Reed," their lawyer began, "how long have you been consulting on Mr. Edwards' case?" "I was first contacted by Mr. Gregory Parker approximately 4 months ago," Reed said, looking at the jury with deep sincerity. "He was deeply concerned about his father's accelerating confusion." "And what did you observe?" "I began informal observation," Reed lied smoothly. "At Mr. Parker's request, I was present at several social gatherings. I observed Mr. Edward displaying classic signs of rapid onset dementia, likely Alzheimer's." "What signs specifically?" "Disorientation," Reed said, ticking them off. "Severe memory lapses. He failed to recognize his own daughter-in-law on 2 separate occasions. And most troubling, severe paranoia." Paranoia, the lawyer prompted. Yes, he developed a fixation that his family was against him. He believed they were trying to kidnap him. This culminated in the unfortunate incident at JFK Airport, a classic paranoid delusion. Believing a flight attendant was a secret messenger faking a heart attack to deplane. These are not the actions of a rational mind. They are textbook symptoms of a psychotic break. I gripped the armrest. He was twisting Jenna's heroism into my insanity. And what about the incident at the hotel, doctor? Even more concerning, Reed said, shaking his head sadly. Mr. Parker located his father and I graciously offered to speak with him to do a simple welfare check. Mr. Edward barricaded himself in his room. He refused all medical help. This demonstrates a clear pattern of behavior. He is a danger to himself and is not capable of making rational decisions about his own care. The lawyer walked closer to the witness box. Doctor, in your professional opinion, is Mr. Edward capable of managing his own financial affairs? Specifically, he let the number drop, a trust valued at over $50 million. Dr. Reed looked at me, his eyes full of fake pity. Absolutely not, he said, his voice firm. He has no grasp of his own finances. He is highly susceptible to undue influence. He glanced at Sullivan. In my medical opinion, Mr. Edward requires immediate mandatory full-time supervised care before he hurts himself or before someone else does. I looked at the jury. They were believing him, every single one of them. My stomach dropped. We were losing. When Dr. Reed stepped down, the jury looked at me with open, sorrowful pity. They saw a broken man. The petitioners call Gregory Parker, the lawyer announced. My son stood up. He walked to the stand, his shoulders slumped. He looked exhausted, heartbroken. He was holding a small, crumpled tissue in his hand. When he took the oath, his voice cracked on the word, truth. Mr. Parker, his lawyer began, his voice soft, like a priest speaking to a grieving parishioner. Please tell the court about your father's state of mind since your mother Alice passed away 6 months ago. Gregory looked down. He dabbed his eyes with the tissue. He's just gone, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. My mother, she was his whole world. His rock when we lost her. He took a shaky breath. When he lost her, the man I knew, he just vanished. What do you mean, vanished? He's lost, Gregory said, looking up at the jury, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He doesn't eat. I'll come over to the house and food I made him 2 days ago is still in the refrigerator untouched. He forgets everything. Names, dates. He went for a walk a few weeks ago just around the neighborhood he's lived in for 40 years, and he got lost. A neighbor found him 3 miles away, just standing on a street corner, not knowing who he was or how he got there. This was a lie. A complete, devastating lie. I had never gotten lost. I looked at Sullivan, who simply wrote something on his legal pad. Perjury. It was terrifying. Gregory continued, his voice cracking again. Melissa and I, we just want to take care of him, the way he and Mom took care of me. But he's not himself. Tell us about the trip to Panama, Mr. Parker. It was for him, Gregory said, his voice rising with a pained desperation. We found this wonderful facility, a place with sunshine, with doctors, with care. We thought it would be a break for him, a way to heal. We were going to go with him, stay with him, make sure he was comfortable. And what happened at the airport? Gregory's face crumpled. He looked directly at me. He had a panic attack, but it was violent. He started screaming. He said a flight attendant was a secret messenger. He faked a heart attack. He accused us, his own family, of trying to hurt him. It was It was like a monster had taken him over. And what do you believe caused this monster, Mr. Parker? Gregory broke down. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. It's him, he choked out, pointing a trembling finger, not at me, but at my lawyer. Mr. Sullivan. Sullivan didn't even flinch. Ever since my mother died, Gregory said, fighting for composure. Mr. Sullivan has been in his ear. We tried to talk about the bills, about managing the estate, and suddenly, he was there, telling my father not to trust us, convincing him we were after the money. He's the one who has been isolating him. He's the one who's been planting these poisonous ideas in his head. My father isn't paranoid. He's being manipulated. He stood up slightly in the witness box. Your Honor, please, I am begging you. This isn't my father. My father wouldn't do this. He is a good man who is being taken advantage of by a shark. I just want my dad back. I am only doing this. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. Because I love you, Dad. And I am trying to save you from him. I am trying to save you from yourself. The courtroom was silent. A juror in the front row was openly weeping. Gregory had just painted himself as the tragic hero, and he had painted me as the ultimate victim, and Sullivan as the villain. Melissa's walk to the stand was a performance in itself. She moved slowly, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked fragile, heartbroken. When she took the oath, her voice was a near inaudible whisper choked with emotion. Mrs. Parker, her lawyer began gently, I know this is difficult. Can you please tell the court what the last 6 months have been like for your family? Melissa looked at Gregory, then at me, her lower lip trembling. It's been a nightmare, she said, her voice catching. We've just been trying to hold on, to keep him safe. Keep him safe from what, Melissa? From himself, she whispered. The man who is sitting here. He is not the father-in-law I have known and loved for 10 years. He's gone. She pressed the handkerchief to her eyes. It started small. He would forget things, my name. He's called me Alice, his late wife's name, more times than I can count. I would correct him gently, and he would just look at me completely blank, as if I were a stranger in his home. I felt my hands clench. It was a lie. A poisonous, terrible lie. I had never once called her Alice. And it got worse, Melissa continued, her voice gaining a frantic edge as if reliving a trauma. 2 weeks ago, I got a call. It was a police officer. They had found him. Found him where? The lawyer asked, his voice filled with feigned shock. He was downtown. He had taken a bus, all the way to the financial district. He was wandering in the street in his house slippers in the rain. He told the officer he was looking for the shipping company, Alice's family company. He said he had a board meeting, but he doesn't work for that company, does he? Never, she sobbed. He has no idea what he's talking about. He was completely disoriented. He didn't know his own address. The police had to call Gregory's number from his phone's contact list. This was brilliant. They were weaving a story that was impossible to disprove. It was a complete fabrication, but it sounded so specific, so real. So what you are telling the court, the lawyer said, summarizing, is that your father-in-law is forgetting names, suffering from delusions, and wandering off, unable to care for himself. Yes, Melissa whispered, looking at the jury with wide, tear-filled eyes. We are terrified. We are so scared he's going to hurt himself. We just want him to be safe. We just want him to be taken care of. But Mr. Sullivan, she shot a venomous glance at my lawyer. He's convinced him we are the enemy. He's twisting everything. We just, we just want our father back. She buried her face in her hands, and her shoulders shook. The jury was completely hers. They looked at me with a mixture of profound pity and fear. Pity for the man I was, and fear of the man I had become. It was over. I could feel it. They had won. Sullivan stood up. He didn't cross-examine Melissa. He didn't need to. He simply let her heartbreaking, pathetic, and entirely false story hang in the air. "No further questions for this witness, Your Honor," he said, his voice flat. Melissa looked confused, as if she had been expecting a fight. She stepped down, dabbing her eyes one last time for the jury, before returning to her seat, where Gregory squeezed her hand in a gesture of shared victory. "Mr. Sullivan," the judge said, "does the defense have a case to present?" "We do, Your Honor," Sullivan said, buttoning his suit jacket. "The defense calls its first witness, Miss Jenna Jensen." The name meant nothing to the courtroom. It was just a name. Gregory and Melissa glanced at each other, shrugging. They looked bored, annoyed that this formality was dragging on. They probably assumed she was an old friend of Alice's, or perhaps a neighbor. Someone who would come up and say, "I was a nice old man." A door at the back of the courtroom opened. Jenna Jensen walked in. She was not in a pantsuit. She was not in casual clothes. She was wearing her full, immaculate flight attendant's uniform, the navy blue dress, the red and blue scarf tied perfectly at her neck, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. She walked with purpose, her back straight, her footsteps echoing confidently on the marble floor. I saw Gregory lean forward, squinting. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? To him, she had just been part of the background, an obstacle, an insignificant uniform who had gotten in his way. Melissa just stared, her expression one of pure, arrogant confusion. Who was this woman? Jenna walked to the witness stand. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Greg or Melissa. She looked only at the court clerk as she raised her right hand. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I do," Jenna said, her voice clear, steady, and carrying a weight that made the jury sit up a little straighter. This was not the weepy, emotional testimony they had been hearing. This was something different. Sullivan approached the stand. "Ms. Jensen, could you please state your full name and occupation for the court?" "My name is Jenna Jensen, and I am a senior flight attendant for American Airlines." Sullivan approached the witness stand. "Good morning, Ms. Jensen. Thank you for being here. Could you please tell the jury where you were employed on the morning of October 12th of this year?" Jenna looked at the jury. "I was on duty, sir, at JFK Airport Terminal 4, assigned as the lead flight attendant for American Airlines Flight 801 with nonstop service to Panama City." Across the room, I saw Melissa lean in and whisper something to Gregory. His brow furrowed. The name Panama had finally gotten their attention. They were starting to connect the dots. "And on that morning," Sullivan continued, "did you have an interaction with the defendant, Mr. Edward?" "I did," Jenna said. "He was one of the last passengers to board, assisted by Mr. and Mrs. Parker." She pointed directly at them. Gregory and Melissa instinctively recoiled, as if she had physically struck them. "Please describe that interaction." "Mr. Edward looked frightened," Jenna said, her voice steady. "His daughter-in-law was holding his arm, but it looked forceful. When I took his boarding pass, I checked the destination. I saw it was a one-way ticket." "Is a one-way ticket unusual for a family vacation?" "Yes. But what was truly unusual was the destination facility listed on his reservation. A place called El Paraíso. The name." I saw Gregory's hand grip the table. He knew. He finally knew who she was. "What did you do, Ms. Jensen?" "I handed him back his pass," she said, "and I whispered to him to pretend he was sick and to run. A few minutes later, I brought him a cup of water. I leaned in and I begged him to say he had chest pains and get off the plane. I told him his life was in danger, and the lawyer on the other side jumped to his feet. Objection, hearsay, speculation. This is an outrageous claim. Sustained, the judge said. The jury will disregard the life in danger comment. But you may continue, Ms. Jensen. Tell us what you saw. I saw Mr. Edward clutch his chest, Jenna said. He was a very convincing actor. He gasped for air and asked for a doctor. And I saw Mr. Gregory and Mrs. Melissa's reaction. And what was that reaction? Sullivan asked. It wasn't concern, Jenna said, her voice dropping. It was anger. Mrs. Parker hissed at him, Dad, don't make a scene. Mr. Parker, Gregory. He physically tried to push his father back down into the seat, telling him he was fine. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. And finally, Sullivan said, Why did you do this? You're a flight attendant. Why would you risk your career, your livelihood for a complete stranger? What was it about the name El Paraíso that made you act? Jenna looked down at her hands. For the first time, her professional calm wavered. When she looked up, her eyes were shining with tears, but her voice was steel. Because 5 years ago, my family did the same thing to my grandfather. Melissa let out a small, audible gasp. My grandfather, Jenna continued, was a widower. He lived alone. My uncle, his son, wanted his inheritance. He started telling everyone my grandfather was confused, that he was wandering, that he was a danger to himself. The exact same words I heard Mrs. Parker scream in the terminal. She took a shaky breath. One day, my uncle took him to a wonderful facility in Mexico for rest and recovery. He said it was all arranged. My family. We trusted him. We weren't allowed to call for the first week to let him settle in. Then when we did call, we could never speak to him directly. He was always sleeping or in physical therapy. We never heard his voice again. 6 months later, we received a phone call. He had passed away from natural causes. His body was cremated in Mexico before we could even get there. What did you find out? Sullivan asked gently. We found out, Jenna said, her voice breaking with a fury she had held for 5 years, that the facility was a fraud. It was a concrete block building in the desert, a place where families paid to dump their elderly relatives. They took his passport. They drugged him into silence. They took every cent he had until his money ran out, and then they let him die. She wiped a tear from her cheek. When I saw Mr. Edwards' ticket, when I saw the name El Paraíso, I didn't just see a name. I saw the parent company, the same one that ran the facility in Mexico. I saw my grandfather's face, and I swore to God, I would not stand by and let that happen to another human being. Not again. Not on my watch. She finished. The courtroom was absolutely devastatingly silent. The jury was staring not at Jenna, but at my son and daughter-in-law. Gregory and Melissa were no longer smug. They weren't confident. They were pale as death, staring at Jenna as if they had just seen a ghost. They finally understood. The insignificant flight attendant they had dismissed was the one person in the world who knew their entire playbook. Gregory's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, shot to his feet. His voice was no longer smooth and empathetic. It was sharp, surgical. Objection, he boomed, and the word cracked through the silent courtroom. Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant. This entire tragic, melodramatic story about this witness's grandfather, what does it have to do with this case with my clients? He turned to the jury, his arms spread wide as if to shield them from Jenna's testimony. This is nothing more than emotional projection. It's a fantasy. She's a suspended employee lashing out. Sustained, the judge said, looking at Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, you are on a very thin tightrope. Connect this or I will have the entire testimony stricken. Sullivan simply nodded. I will, Your Honor. Mr. Peterson, would you like to cross-examine the witness? Peterson's smile was predatory. He wanted to. Absolutely. He stalked toward the witness stand, looking at Jenna as if she were something he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. Ms. Jensen, is it? You've just told this court a very sad story. A trauma that clearly still affects you very deeply. Wouldn't you say, Jenna began. You're an emotional person, aren't you, Ms. Jensen? You see tragedy everywhere. So you saw a loving, caring son and his wife taking their elderly father on a much-needed vacation. I saw a one-way ticket, Jenna said firmly. You saw a piece of paper, Peterson snapped. And based on this piece of paper and your own personal trauma, you took it upon yourself to interfere, to accost a passenger, to create a medical emergency where none existed. I warned him, Jenna said. You terrorized him, Peterson shot back. You, a total stranger, decided you knew better than his own son. A son who, by the way, holds a legal medical power of attorney. You fabricated a heart attack. You delayed an international flight. And you were in fact suspended for your actions, were you not? Yes, I was suspended. Of course you were, Your Honor. Peterson turned to the judge, his voice dripping with contempt. This entire testimony is prejudicial and irrelevant. It is the unhinged fantasy of a disgruntled suspended employee who is projecting her own family tragedy onto my clients. She has presented not one single shred of evidence, only feelings. This is a waste of the court's time. I move to strike her entire testimony. The judge looked at Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan? He has a point. Sullivan smiled. A thin, cold smile that held no humor. He let the objection hang in the air for a moment, letting the jury absorb Peterson's dismissive words. Feelings, Your Honor. Sullivan said, his voice quiet, but carrying to every corner of the room. Mr. Peterson is right. We shouldn't rely on feelings. We should rely on facts. He turned to the court clerk. I would like to enter into evidence Defense Exhibit A. This is a certified copy of the passenger manifest and reservation details for American Airlines Flight 8001 on October 12th, obtained directly from the airline's servers this morning. The clerk handed the document to the judge, who reviewed it. A copy was handed to Mr. Peterson. I saw him snatch it from the clerk's hand. This manifest, Sullivan continued, shows 3 tickets booked under the same reservation number. Gregory Parker, Melissa Parker, and Edward Parker. Gregory was leaning forward, his jaw tight. Melissa was whispering furiously to him. And if you turn to page 3, Your Honor, Sullivan said, you will see the ticket details for Mr. Edward. Unlike the round-trip tickets purchased for Mr. and Mrs. Parker, Mr. Edwards' ticket was just as Ms. Jensen testified. What does it say, Mr. Peterson? I believe the term is one way. Peterson's face went red. Objection, that's standard for extended medical stays. It's an open-ended return. An open-ended return to a vacation, Sullivan shot back. Or an open-ended return to the facility Ms. Jensen mentioned, which brings me to Defense Exhibit B. He walked back to his table and picked up a thick, bound document, at least 200 pages long. He held it up for the jury to see. Mr. Peterson claims Ms. Jensen is projecting, that she is seeing ghosts based on a name. Well, my investigator, Mr. Mason, doesn't deal in ghosts. He deals in facts. This, he said, dropping the document onto the clerk's desk with a heavy thud, is a comprehensive investigation into El Paraíso, the special facility in Panama that my clients were so desperate to take their father to. Peterson was on his feet again. Objection, relevance. We've already established my clients were seeking medical care for a loved one. Overruled. The judge said, his eyes fixed on the thick report. I'll allow it. Proceed, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you, Your Honor. Sullivan walked to the jury box. El Paraíso, the paradise. It has a lovely website. You should all see it. Pictures of palm trees, ocean views, smiling nurses. It calls itself a luxury long-term wellness retreat for the distinguished elderly. He paused, then his voice turned to ice. But it is not a wellness retreat. It is not licensed as a medical facility by the Panamanian government. It is not recognized by any U.S. medical board. What it is, ladies and gentlemen, is a private residential holding center, a prison for hire. A juror in the front row put her hand to her mouth. My investigator's report includes satellite imagery, high walls, barbed wire, guards at the only gate. It is located over 50 miles from the nearest city, accessible only by a single unpaved road. The intake procedure, confirmed by 3 former employees who fled the country, is as follows. Upon arrival, all patients, or as they call them, residents, have their passports, their phones, and all personal identification immediately confiscated and locked in a safe. Communication with the outside world, Sullivan continued, is forbidden for the first 90-day acclimatization period. After that, all calls and letters are monitored. The facility boasts a 10-to-1 resident-to-staff ratio. What it doesn't boast is that staff includes cooks, janitors, and armed guards. The actual medical staff, 1 part-time doctor who visits on Thursdays. He turned and looked directly at Gregory and Melissa. And most importantly, El Paraiso's contract, which we have obtained a copy of, stipulates that in the event of a resident's passing, their remains are to be cremated on-site within 24 hours to, and I quote, comply with local sanitation laws. The courtroom was in absolute stunned silence. This, Sullivan said, his voice now a low growl, is not a wellness center. This is a place to make people disappear. This is the place my clients booked a one-way ticket for. Ms. Jensen's testimony wasn't a fantasy, Mr. Peterson. It was an act of heroism. She wasn't projecting. She was right. Sullivan let the weight of the El Paraiso report settle over the courtroom. The jury was visibly shaken. One woman, a grandmother herself, was staring at Gregory with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. Peterson, their lawyer, was shuffling his papers, his smug confidence completely gone. The defense, Sullivan announced, his voice ringing with renewed power, calls Mr. Edward. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to move. I walked past the jury box. I did not look at them. I walked past Gregory and Melissa. I did not look at them either. I kept my eyes on the judge, on the clerk, on the American flag. I sat in the witness box. The clerk swore me in. Sullivan approached. He didn't start with the airport. He didn't start with the hotel. He started with the one thing that mattered. Mr. Edward, he said, his voice quiet but firm, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you afraid of your son, Gregory? The question hung in the air. I looked at Gregory. He was watching me, his eyes cold, warning me. No, I said, my voice hoarse. I cleared my throat. No, I was never afraid of my son. I loved him. I was proud of him. I was grieving my wife and he and Melissa. They were all I had left. I trusted them. I trusted them with everything. With everything, Sullivan asked. With my life, I said. I signed a power of attorney giving them full control of my health, my finances, should I become unwell. I did it willingly. I did it out of love, because I believed they loved me. And do you still believe that Mr. Edward? I looked at my hands clasped on the wooden rail. I was never afraid of him, I repeated. Not until I found out why he was so eager to have me declared incompetent. And why was that? Objection, Peterson shouted. The witness is speculating about my client's motives. Overruled, the judge said, waving a hand. The witness may answer. This goes directly to his state of mind. Please answer the question, Mr. Edward. I wasn't afraid of him, I said, looking at the jury, until my lawyer, Mr. Sullivan, informed me of the true nature of my late wife's estate. I wasn't afraid, until I learned about the $50 million trust fund. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge's head snapped up. The jury members looked at each other confused. $50 million. This old man, Gregory, had gone rigid, his face pale. He knew where this was going. "A $50 million trust?" Sullivan asked, feigning surprise for the jury's benefit. "Please explain that to the court." "My wife, Alice," I said, my voice shaking, but growing stronger, "was a wealthy woman who chose to live simply. She set up a trust. I was to live off the interest. I never knew the full amount. But she was worried about Gregory. She saw his ambition. She saw his greed." "Objection!" Peterson yelled. "Hearsay. The witness cannot testify as to what his dead wife saw." "Sustained," the judge said. "Stick to the facts, Mr. Edward. What does the trust do?" "It has a clause," I said, "an incapacity clause. It states that if I am ever declared mentally incompetent, by a court or by 2 doctors, my control of the trust ends." Sullivan nodded. "And what happens then, Mr. Edward? Who gets the money?" I lifted my head and looked directly at my son. "He does," I said. "My son Gregory. He gets all of it. $52 million. The moment I am declared insane, he gets everything." I turned to the jury. I wasn't afraid of him until I realized they weren't trying to care for me. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to activate the clause. The trip to Panama, the one-way ticket, the special facility. It was a $50 million heist. The courtroom exploded in murmurs. The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" Peterson was on his feet, his face red. He had seen his entire case, his entire narrative of the confused old man evaporate. The jury didn't see a confused man anymore. They saw a victim. They saw a motive. But then Peterson did something I will never forget. He smiled. He thought he saw a lifeline. He thought I had just handed him the weapon to destroy me. "Objection, Your Honor!" he shouted, his voice triumphant. "Objection! This proves our entire case." Sullivan stood back, a neutral expression on his face. The judge looked at Peterson, confused. "Explain yourself, counselor." "Don't you see?" Peterson boomed, walking toward the jury. "This confirms everything. This poor grieving man discovers that his wife, who he admits he trusted completely secretly, set up a $50 million trust, and that his son, his own son, stands to inherit it if he's unwell." He turned back to me, his finger pointing. "This isn't proof of a conspiracy. This is the source of his paranoia. He found out about this clause, and in his grief-stricken, confused mind, he invented this entire fantasy. He invented the kidnapping plot. He invented the El Paraíso story. He's not a victim. He's a man suffering from a profound paranoid delusion triggered by this very trust." He looked at the judge, at the jury, his arms wide. "My client, Gregory Parker, isn't a monster. He's a hero. He's a son who is desperately trying to protect his family's assets, to protect his father's legacy, from the very man who is trying to destroy it. His own father." It was a brilliant move. He had taken my bombshell and turned it back on me. He had made me sound like the crazy one again. I looked at the jury. The woman who had been disgusted was now confused. The pity was gone, replaced by doubt. I looked at Sullivan. He was perfectly still, his face unreadable. Gregory was smiling. A small, cruel, victorious smile. He thought he had won. He thought his lawyer had just saved him. He had no idea he had just sealed his own fate. Sullivan let Peterson's triumphant words hang in the silent courtroom. He let them settle over the jury, who now looked at me with fresh, profound doubt. Peterson sat down, looking smugly at Gregory and Melissa. He had done his job. He had painted me as a paranoid, grieving old man hallucinating a conspiracy. Then Sullivan smiled. It was not a large smile. It was a small, cold, precise smile. "Mr. Peterson is absolutely correct, Your Honor," Sullivan said, his voice calm and agreeable. Peterson's smile widened. Gregory visibly relaxed. "He is correct. Sullivan continued, that this entire case, Kasam, is about motive. He is correct that my client, Mr. Edward, learned of this $50 million trust and its incapacity clause. And he is correct that this knowledge is the direct cause of everything that has happened since. Sullivan paused, then turned to the judge. But what Mr. Peterson hasn't told the jury, because to be fair, he didn't know until this very moment, is what else my client learned. Peterson's smile flickered. His eyes narrowed. Objection. What is this more theatrics? Your Honor, Sullivan said. I would simply like to continue reading from the trust document that opposing counsel was so eager to introduce. We have all spent a great deal of time on Article 12A, the incapacity clause. I would now like to draw the court's attention to Article 12B. He pulled a document from his briefcase. I have copies for the court and for Mr. Peterson. A clerk handed the single sheet of paper to Peterson. I watched him snatch it. I watched his eyes scan the first line, then the second. I watched the blood drain from his face. Your Honor, Peterson stammered, standing up, his voice suddenly a full octave higher. This is a matter of trust interpretation. It's irrelevant to the competency of... Sit down, Mr. Peterson, the judge said, his voice sharp. He was reading his own copy and his eyes were wide. You were the one who insisted we discuss the trust's motive. You opened this door. Mr. Sullivan, please read the clause. Aloud. Sullivan put on his reading glasses. He looked directly at Gregory. Article 12B, entitled The Forfeiture Clause. Gregory went as still as a statue. Melissa, sensing the change in the room, grabbed his arm. Sullivan began to read, his voice clear and devastating. It is stipulated that, in the event the designated secondary beneficiary, Mr. Gregory Parker, he paused, letting our son's name echo in the silence, was found to have taken malicious, fraudulent, or coercive action, including but not limited to the abuse of a power of attorney, or conspiring to produce a false paid-for medical diagnosis for the express purpose of, and I quote, improperly and prematurely triggering the incapacity clause Article 12A for personal financial gain. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own blood rushing in my ears. Then, in that event, Sullivan continued, the inheritance rights claims and all standing of the secondary beneficiary, Mr. Gregory Parker, upon this trust, are declared immediately, irrevocably, and permanently null and void. I watched my son. His mouth was slightly open. He was looking at his lawyer, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. Melissa had her hand over her mouth. Peterson just slumped in his chair. He understood. He had been played, not by Sullivan, but by my wife Alice 6 months ago from her grave. Sullivan took off his glasses. He looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peterson was right. This whole case is about the trust. It is about my client's state of mind when he found out about it. But it wasn't paranoia that was triggered. It was a plan. A plan set in motion by his brilliant, far-sighted wife. He turned to me. Mr. Edward, when you were on that plane, when you were in that hotel, you weren't just fighting for $50 million. Were you? No? I said, my voice finally clear and strong. I wasn't fighting for it. I was protecting it. I was the bait. My wife, Alice. She made me the trap. Sullivan turned back to the jury, his voice dropping to a whisper. Gregory and Melissa Parker walked right into it. They didn't just attempt to trigger a clause, Your Honor. They succeeded. Just not the one they were hoping for. He looked at Gregory and Melissa, whose faces were now ashen broken. By their own fraudulent actions, by their own perjured testimony here today, by the false testimony of Dr. Reed, and by their desperate attempts at abduction, they have successfully and permanently disinherited themselves. He let the words land. They didn't just lose this case, Sullivan said. They lost everything. Gregory lost all composure. He looked like a cornered animal. He literally stood up, knocking his chair over, and screamed, his voice cracking. "No, that's not true. Where does it go? Where does the money go? Back to him." He pointed a shaking, accusing finger at me. "Is that it? It all goes back to him." Sullivan slowly, deliberately shook his head. "No, Gregory. Alice was far more thorough than that. She knew that putting the burden of managing $52 million back onto Edward would just make him a target for the rest of his life. She wanted him to be safe. She wanted him to be free." Sullivan looked down at the document one last time. Article 12B, the forfeiture clause, concludes as follows: "And the entire $52 million principal of the trust shall in that event be immediately and fully disbursed to the designated tertiary or third beneficiary." "Who?" Melissa whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "What third beneficiary? There is no one else." Sullivan looked up past them, past me, and directly at the witness stand, where Jenna Jensen was still sitting, watching the proceedings with wide, stunned eyes. "The tertiary beneficiary," Sullivan announced, his voice filling the silent courtroom, "is a small non-profit organization dedicated to combating elder abuse and providing legal aid to seniors trapped in fraudulent care facilities." He smiled. "The Alice's Light Foundation for Elder Justice." Jenna's hands flew to her mouth. She looked from Sullivan to me, her eyes overflowing with tears of disbelief. Peterson just stared, his mouth open. That's her foundation." "That is correct," Sullivan said. "Alice was a secret, anonymous benefactor to Ms. Jensen's small organization for years. She was funding Ms. Jensen's work long before any of us knew who she was." He turned, beaming, to the witness stand. "So, congratulations, Ms. Jensen. Your grandfather's legacy, which you fought so bravely to protect, it's just been fully funded. Your organization has just been awarded $52 million. Gregory's scream was something inhuman, a raw, guttural howl of disbelief that echoed off the courtroom walls. No, you can't! It's mine! It's mine!" Melissa just collapsed. She didn't faint. She simply folded in on herself, her body slumping forward in the chair, as a terrible wailing sob tore out of her. Peterson, their lawyer, was ashen-faced. He was shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact, already mentally calculating his own malpractice insurance. The judge banged his gavel, but it was barely heard over Gregory's continued screaming. "She can't do that. Tell them that's my money." "Order!" the judge roared. "Mr. Parker, sit down." Sullivan rose one last time. "Your Honor," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "in light of the clear, premeditated, and fraudulent actions presented here today, including conspiracy to commit abduction and the admitted perjury of Dr. Reed, we ask the court to not only deny the petitioner's request for guardianship, but to refer this entire matter along with all our evidence to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal investigation." The judge looked at Gregory, who was now being restrained by two bailiffs, his face a mask of tears and spittle. He looked at Melissa, who was weeping uncontrollably. He looked at me. "Petition denied," the judge said, his voice like granite. "And Mr. Sullivan, your request is granted. I am referring this matter for criminal prosecution. This hearing is adjourned." The last I saw of my son, he was being led out of the courtroom, his hands cuffed behind his back. He wasn't a $50 million heir. He wasn't a cunning planner. He was just a desperate, broken man who had bet everything and lost it all. 6 months later. The office is no longer a small, cramped space in Hoboken. It's a full floor in a midtown building. The walls are bright. Phones are ringing. Young lawyers and social workers are moving with purpose. The sign on the glass door reads, "The Alice's Light Foundation for Elder Justice." Jenna Jensen is no longer a flight attendant. She's the executive director. She's in a meeting, her voice confident, commanding. I sit at a large table, Alice's old mahogany dining table, which I donated. In front of me is a new file. I read the case. A woman in Ohio. Her children are trying to sell her farm, claiming she's forgetful. They've already changed her locks. I pick up a pen and make a note. Assign Mason. I write in the margin. Check for recent POA filings and any one-way travel reservations. Jenna comes out of her meeting and sees me. She smiles. A real warm smile. How's that one look, Edward? It looks familiar, I say, handing her the file. I think we can help this one. I turn back to the window looking out over the city. My son, Gregory, and Melissa were convicted 2 months ago. Conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, fraud. They will be in prison for a very long time. I look at the small silver-framed picture of Alice on my desk. Her smile is knowing. For a long time I was angry at her. Angry that she kept such a secret. Angry that she set this terrible trap. But now, I understand. She didn't just protect her money. She gave me a new purpose. She gave Jenna a new life. And she gave justice to thousands of people we haven't even met yet. I lost my son, yes. I lost the boy I thought he was. But I found a mission. And I know, looking at her picture, that this is what she wanted all along. Thank you, Alice, I whisper. You really did think of everything. Her justice was just beginning, and now, so was mine. It teaches us that greed is not just a desire. It is a profound blind spot. Gregory and Melissa were so blinded by the $52 million prize that they never once stopped to consider the intelligence of the woman who built the fortune or the resilience of the man who loved her. Alice, the architect of their downfall, knew her son's character perfectly. She didn't just leave a trust. She set a trap using their own predictable, predatory nature as the bait. This story is a chilling reminder that those who attempt to seize everything through deceit often lose everything undone by the very flaws they refuse to see in themselves. If you believe Gregory and Melissa got the poetic justice they deserved, hit the like button and share your favorite wow moment from the trial in the comments below.